Normally, when you think of dragons in Game of Thrones, or honestly any fantasy universe, you picture Balerion the Black Dread melting Harrenhal, Vhagar crushing armies, fire and destruction on an apocalyptic scale. But the Valyrians didn't just conquer land and sky, they conquered the ocean. In our previous video, we gave you the complete overview of all Valyrian dragon breeds, the Colossi, Embermaws, Sky Shriekers, and yes, the Waverunners. Today, we're diving deep into the breed that made Valyria a naval superpower. The dragons that could plunge beneath the waves, hunt in the depths, and turn the sea itself into a weapon. These were the Waverunners, and they came in three distinct bloodlines. Depthsingers, true aquatic hunters that could hold their breath for over an hour. Tidebreakers, war dragons that could surface beneath enemy fleets like krakens. And Saltwhispers, fast coastal patrol specialists that could cover 1,000 miles in a single day. This is the story of Valyria's smallest dragons that became its most essential, and how their descendants like Seasmoke, Grey Ghost, and Meraxes carried their legacy to Westeros and the world of House of the Dragon. Picture the Valyrian freehold around 6,500 years before Aegon's conquest. The Dragon Lords dominate the land with their Colossi siege dragons and control the skies with Sky Shriekers. But they have a critical weakness: the ocean. Most dragons hate water. Their scales are built for volcanic heat, not cold seawater. Plunge a dragon into the ocean and its body temperature drops, its flame weakens, its flight becomes sluggish. Early Valyrian merchant ships, constantly raided by pirates because dragons couldn't effectively patrol open water. The freehold was becoming a land empire, surrounded by hostile seas it couldn't control, until House Balerion started a breeding program everyone thought was insane. House Balerion controlled southern coastal colonies where wealth came from sea trade. Pirates were bleeding them dry. So Lord Meraxes Balerion decided to breed dragons that didn't just tolerate water, they loved it. Other families mocked them. "You're breeding fish," they sneered. But after 3 generations of brutal selective breeding, culling every hatchling that showed hydrophobia, selecting for water-repellent scales and webbed talons, they succeeded. The first Depthsinger was born. Imagine a dragon barely 15 feet long, sleek as an eel, scales like polished jade, with a serpentine body and powerful webbed hind legs. Small, tight-folded wings that became nearly invisible underwater. Depthsingers could hold their breath for over an hour. They had specialized lung chambers that stored oxygen like primitive swim bladders. Their nostrils sealed completely when diving. And they were fast, matching their flying speed underwater, roughly 40 to 50 miles per hour in straight sprints, but you couldn't ride them. Too small. Wingspan maybe 40 to 50 feet maximum. So, Valyrians used them as hunting companions, like falcons of the sea. Wealthy nobles took Depthsingers on ships for deep-sea hunts, chasing massive marlins, tuna the size of oxen, even small whales. They herded fish into nets. And critically, they gathered intelligence, swimming into enemy harbors at night to count ships and map defenses without ever being spotted. By 6000 BC, House Balerion had bred over 200 Depthsingers. They became status symbols across the freehold, but they were still too small for war. For that, Balerion needed something bigger. Around 5800 BC, House Balerion crossbred Depthsingers with Stormclaws, those all-weather mountain dragons with broad, powerful wings. The result? Tidebreakers. These magnificent beasts had wingspans of 260 to 380 feet, comparable to mid-sized Embermaws. Deep green scales with salt rime coatings that shimmered in sunlight. Massive keel-shaped chests, built for cutting through water. Webbed hind talons, and flame that created billowing clouds of steam over water, blinding entire enemy fleets. Tidebreakers could dive for 5 to 10 minutes. For a dragon that size, this was revolutionary. They could circle above a naval battle, plunge beneath the waves, swim under enemy galleys, and surface on the other side, creating chaos, capsizing ships with sheer displacement force. They could pursue fleeing vessels through storms. They could perch on sea stacks where no other dragon could land. Their steam breath was devastating. Tidebreakers could boil the ocean itself, scalding crews, creating superheated mist that made naval combat a nightmare. House Baleris used Tidebreakers to escort merchant fleets. House Vhagar, along the Volantis coast, bred them to enforce harbor tariffs. House Tyrrells in Myr used them to crush Stepstone's pirates. By the classical freehold, roughly 150 Tidebreakers patrolled Valyrian waters. Dragons like Seasmoke and Meraxes carry heavy Tidebreaker bloodlines. That pale silvery coloring, streamlined build, and exceptional agility over water. Pure Tidebreaker genetics. But Tidebreakers were expensive. Tons of fresh fish daily, specialized coastal lairs, constant maintenance. Valyria needed something cheaper for routine patrols. Enter Saltwhispers, the result of crossing Depthsingers with sunscales, those efficient desert dragons built for endurance. Saltwhispers were beautiful. Wingspans around 180 to 240 feet. Bronze, pale gold, or sea green scales that changed color in different light, almost iridescent. Long, narrow wings built for gliding. Extremely efficient metabolisms that let them fly all day on minimal food. They couldn't truly dive like Tidebreakers, but they could skim, flying inches above water, talons trailing surf, snatching fish without slowing. They thrived in sea spray and salt mist, and they were fast, covering 1,000 miles in a single day over open ocean. House Balerians in the Stepstones bred hundreds of them as the backbone of Valyria's coastal defense. They weren't impressive in direct combat, but for deterrence, perfect. Pirates see a dragon circling overhead. They turn around. By the doom, over 300 Saltwhispers patrolled Valyrian coastal holdings, the unsung workhorses of naval supremacy. Breeding Waverunners required selecting for behavioral traits most dragons actively resist. Water conditioning. From hatching, eggs were placed in shallow tidal pools warmed by volcanic vents. Hatchlings emerged into water, not air. For the first month, handlers submerged them for increasing intervals. Any hatchling that panicked culled immediately. Scale selection. Handlers rubbed hatchlings with fish oil and seawater, checking how quickly liquid beaded off. Dragons with porous scales that held moisture were eliminated. The best Waverunners had scales like wet glass. Webbing development. Handlers measured membrane between hatchling claws. Dragons with pronounced webbing were prioritized for breeding. After 20 generations, you had dragons with semi-aquatic talons. Lung capacity testing. Adolescent Depthsingers were tested by diving them into deep water. Handlers timed how long they could stay submerged. Under 30 minutes, not breeding stock. Over an hour, exceptional. The blood magic. This is Valyria, and in Valyria, everything involved blood magic. The brine baptism. Newly bonded riders cut their palms, letting blood drip into seawater that their dragon would drink, creating a blood bond associated with the ocean. Coral feeding. Some families fed ground coral and crushed pearls to pregnant dragons, believing it strengthened water affinity in embryos. Storm blessing. During major storms, Waverunner eggs were placed on exposed cliff tops to be blessed by lightning and sea spray. Eggs that survived were considered touched by Meraxes, goddess of sea lanes. During the Fourth Giscari War, Gis assembled 300 galleys to assault Valyrian ports. The Valyrians were outnumbered, only 80 warships, but they had 12 Tidebreakers. Lord Varon Baleris waited for the Giscari fleet to enter narrow straits. Then the Tidebreakers dove before dawn, submerged in deep water. When the enemy entered the kill zone, dragons surfaced simultaneously beneath galleys, capsizing them with a displacement force. Then they ignited the water. 12 dragons breathing flame across oil-slicked seas, turning the straits into a boiling hellscape. Giscari sailors jumped overboard to escape fire, only to be scalded by superheated water. Gis lost 240 ships. Valyria lost 3. During the Stepstones privateer wars, pirates would scatter into hidden coves and sea caves where conventional dragons couldn't find them. But Saltwhispers could patrol constantly, and Tidebreakers could pursue into storms where pirates thought they were safe. The most famous engagement was the burning of Torturer's Deep, a pirate stronghold built into sea cave networks. Lady Shayna Tyralis took her Tidebreaker Brinefang and dove into the cave system underwater, navigating through submerged tunnels. She surfaced inside the pirate anchorage, where 40 ships sat at anchor, thinking they were safe. Brinefang burned every single one. When the doom came, in 102 BC, most Waverunners died, but some bloodlines survived in the Targaryen exodus to Dragonstone. Meraxes, ridden by Queen Rhaenys during Aegon's conquest, was almost certainly a Tidebreaker descendant. Silver-scaled, massive, 410-foot wingspan, and notably comfortable over water. Seasmoke, pale silver-gray, described as nimble in the air, comfortable over the narrow sea, is absolutely a Tidebreaker throwback, probably mixed with Saltwhisper bloodlines. Grey Ghost, the wild dragon who hunted fish in the narrow sea, carries Depthsinger genetics, proof that even wild dragons express those water-hunting traits. Waverunners were never the biggest or most famous dragons, but they were essential. They turned the ocean into a Valyrian weapon. They let 40 Dragonlord families control shipping lanes from Ashai to Westeros. They made piracy a death sentence and maritime trade safe for 5,000 years. Without Waverunners, Valyria controls land and sky, but gets raided to death at sea. With them, Valyria dominates everything, and when they died in the Doom, the Free Cities lost naval supremacy immediately. The Stepstones became the pirate nightmare they remain in Game of Thrones. The Depthsingers that could dive for an hour. The Tidebreakers that could capsize galleys and boil the ocean. The Saltwhispers that could patrol 1,000 miles without rest. The smallest dragons that conquered the greatest ocean, and whose descendants, like Seasmoke, Meraxes, and Grey Ghost, carried their legacy to the world of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. If you want more deep dives into specific Valyrian dragon breeds, let me know in the comments which breed we should cover next. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more Old Valyria lore.